What would you do if your husband of 15 years suddenly abandoned you and your sick child for a younger woman, only to discover years later that a simple DNA test would unravel a shocking conspiracy that would change everything? That's exactly what happened to Olivia Carter, a dedicated elementary school teacher whose life collapsed when her husband Nathan walked out, claiming he never truly loved her. But what she discovered wasn't just a failed marriage or a midlife crisis. Inside her son's genetic test results lay a secret so valuable that powerful people would stop at nothing to keep it buried. A secret worth millions that explained why her husband really left. Before we dive into this incredible story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from today. Olivia Carter was 38 years old, an elementary school teacher whose life had been shattered 2 years earlier when her husband Nathan suddenly announced he was leaving her for Heather, a younger colleague from his office. He left behind not just a devastated wife, but also their 15-year-old son Zach, who had begun developing mysterious health symptoms that doctors couldn't explain. With mounting medical bills, a mortgage she could barely afford, and a son spiraling into depression, Olivia made a desperate choice to spend her last savings on a comprehensive genetic test that insurance wouldn't cover. Little did she know that this decision would uncover a decades-old medical fraud that stretched back before Zach was even born. The test results wouldn't just reveal the truth about her son's condition, they would expose why her husband had really left, the true identity of her son's biological father, and a conspiracy involving one of the wealthiest families in town, who would do anything to keep their secret hidden. Olivia's life hadn't always been this way. For years, she and Nathan had seemed like the perfect couple in their suburban neighborhood of Westlake. Nathan worked as a marketing executive for Thompson Biotech, one of the largest employers in the area, while Olivia taught 3rd grade at Westlake Elementary. They had struggled with infertility for years before finally conceiving Zach with help from the now-defunct Lakeside Fertility Clinic. The day Nathan left was etched into Olivia's memory like a scar that never fully healed. She had come home from a parent-teacher conference to find him packing a suitcase, his face cold and distant. "I can't do this anymore," he had said, not even looking her in the eyes. "I've been living a lie. I never really loved you. Not the way you deserve." When Olivia, stunned and choking back tears, asked if there was someone else, he hadn't even tried to deny it. Heather was 10 years younger, a research assistant at Thompson Biotech with a dazzling smile and no complications. "Zach will understand eventually," Nathan had said, as if abandoning a child was something that could be rationalized away. "I need a fresh start. I can't be tied down anymore." That had been 2 years ago. The divorce had been swift and brutal. Nathan had excellent lawyers who managed to minimize his financial obligations. The child support payments barely covered Zach's basic needs, let alone the mounting medical bills that began 6 months after Nathan left, when Zach started experiencing unexplained nosebleeds, chronic fatigue, and joint pain. Olivia had taken second jobs, tutoring after school and weekend shifts at a local bookstore, but it was never enough. The medical bills kept coming. Doctor after doctor was baffled by Zach's symptoms. Each specialist required another copay, another test, another prescription that might or might not help. Meanwhile, their modest 2-bedroom house, once a source of pride, was now at risk of foreclosure. Zach's behavior had changed too. Once an outgoing, athletic boy who loved baseball and science projects, he had become withdrawn and angry. His grades plummeted. He lashed out at Olivia, blaming her for his father's departure. Most concerning were the nightmares that left him, screaming in the night, further draining Olivia's already depleted energy reserves, when Dr. Melissa Chang, a pediatric hematologist at Westlake Memorial Hospital, suggested a comprehensive genetic panel to check for rare blood disorders. Olivia had initially balked at the cost. "Insurance will only cover the basic panel," Dr. Chang had explained, her expression sympathetic but firm. But Zach's symptoms suggest something more unusual. The comprehensive test could give us answers that would save months of trial and error. The comprehensive test cost $4,200. Olivia had exactly $4,378 in her emergency savings account. Money she had been carefully setting aside to cover the next mortgage payment and keep them from losing their home. Her best friend Julia had thought she was making a terrible mistake. "You're going to risk your house for a test that might not even show." "Anything?" Julia had asked over coffee the morning Olivia was scheduled to make the payment. "Can't you make Nathan pay for it? It's his son, too." Olivia had already tried. Nathan had replied through his lawyer that he was not obligated to cover experimental procedures not deemed medically necessary by insurance providers. "Something is seriously wrong with Zach," Olivia had told Julia, her voice breaking. "Every day he gets a little worse. If I lose him because I was trying to save our house—" She couldn't even finish the sentence. That afternoon, Olivia had written a check for $4,200, emptying her savings account and leaving her with just $178 to her name. The lab technician who drew Zach's blood had been kind, assuring her they would rush the results. Still, it would take 3 weeks for the full analysis. Those 3 weeks had been the longest of Olivia's life. Zach had 2 more severe nosebleeds, one so bad they ended up in the emergency room at 2 a.m. The foreclosure notice arrived, giving them 30 days to make payment arrangements. Nathan texted that he would be missing Zach's upcoming birthday because he and Heather were taking a vacation to Cabo San Lucas. When Olivia's phone finally rang with Dr. Chang's number, she had answered with trembling hands, praying for answers, but terrified of what they might be. "Mrs. Carter, we have Zach's results," Dr. Chang had said. "There are some unusual findings. I'd like you to come in so we can discuss them in person. Can you come tomorrow morning? And please, come alone. First, we'll bring Zach in after we've talked." That night, Olivia barely slept. Her mind raced through terrible possibilities. Leukemia, hemophilia, some rare genetic disorder with no cure. By the time she arrived at Dr. Chang's office the next morning, her eyes were ringed with dark circles, her body running on nothing but fear and determination. What Dr. Chang told her in that sterile office, with its medical diagrams and framed credentials, would change everything Olivia thought she knew about her life, her marriage, and most of all, about her son's true identity. "Please, sit down, Mrs. Carter," Dr. Chang said, gesturing to the chair across from her desk. The hematologist's usual warm smile was replaced with a serious expression that made Olivia's stomach tighten. She clutched her purse in her lap, bracing herself. "Just tell me what's wrong with my son. Whatever it is, we'll face it." Dr. Chang opened a thick folder containing Zach's test results. The genetic panel revealed some concerning markers that could explain Zach's symptoms. There's evidence of a rare blood disorder called von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome. Von Willebrand? I've heard of that. But what's the Thompson part? Olivia asked, leaning forward. It's an extremely rare variant first documented by Dr. James Thompson in the 1980s. Only about 30 cases have ever been recorded, primarily in families with direct genetic links to the Thompson bloodline. Olivia's brow furrowed. Thompson, like Thompson Biotech, where Nathan works. Possibly related, yes. The syndrome causes increased bleeding, fatigue, joint pain. All symptoms Zach has been experiencing. The good news is it's treatable with specialized care. Dr. Chang paused, seeming to choose her next words carefully. However, there's something else in these results that's unusual. What do you mean, unusual? Genetic inheritance patterns typically follow predictable rules. Based on these results, I would need to see both parents' genetic profiles to understand how Zach inherited this condition. Nathan won't agree to any testing. He barely acknowledges Zack exists anymore, Olivia said bitterly. Dr. Chang folded her hands on the desk. Mrs. Carter, there's no easy way to say this, but the genetic markers Zack carries, they don't align with what we would expect if Nathan were his biological father. The room seemed to tilt sideways. Olivia gripped the armrests of her chair. That's not possible. I was never with anyone else. I understand this is shocking. There are several possible explanations, including rare genetic mutations or... Dr. Chang hesitated. Or what? Olivia demanded. Or some form of mix-up or error during your fertility treatments. Olivia's mind raced back 16 years to the hopeful, desperate months at Lakeside Fertility Clinic. After 3 years of trying to conceive naturally, she and Nathan had turned to medical intervention. Dr. Gerald Ford had been their fertility specialist, a man with kind eyes and reassuring words who had guided them through the process. There could be no mistake, Olivia insisted. We were so careful about everything. I'd like to run additional tests to confirm these findings, Dr. Chang said. The next step would be to collect a sample from you, and ideally, from Nathan as well. Though I understand that might be difficult. Olivia felt as though she were drowning. This made no sense. Zack had Nathan's cleft chin, his way of tilting his head when confused. How could he not be Nathan's son? Then a terrible thought struck her. Wait, this blood disorder, you said it's called von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome, and it's connected to the Thompson family? Dr. Chang nodded. Yes, it's named partly after the researcher who identified the specific genetic mutation. Dr. James Thompson, Olivia said slowly. Is he related to William Thompson, the CEO of Thompson Biotech? They were brothers, I believe. James passed away about 10 years ago from complications of the same disorder. The room seemed to close. In around Olivia, Thompson Biotech, Nathan's employer for the past 20 years, the company that had funded the Lakeside Fertility Clinic's research program. I need these additional tests, Olivia said, her voice steadier than she felt. For both me and Zack. Dr. Chang looked relieved but concerned. There's another issue, Mrs. Carter. Your insurance won't cover these follow-up specialized genetic tests. They'll cost approximately $3,800. 3,000, Olivia's voice caught. She had just spent her last savings on the first test. The mortgage payment was already overdue. How soon do we need these results? If Zack has this syndrome, we need to begin treatment as soon as possible. His symptoms could worsen suddenly. Olivia closed her eyes briefly, picturing Zack's pale face, his nosebleeds becoming more frequent and severe. How long do I have to decide? I can hold the lab requisition for 48 hours. After that, we'd need to resubmit everything. That evening, Olivia sat at her kitchen table surrounded by bills, her laptop open to her online banking page with its devastating balance. 178.42, not even close to what she needed. Her phone buzzed, with a text from Nathan. Can't make child support payment this month. Company restructuring. Will make it up next month. Olivia wanted to scream. This was the third missed payment in 6 months. Instead, she texted back, Zack needs additional medical tests, $3,800. It's urgent. The reply came almost instantly. Not my problem. Talk to your insurance. She stared at the phone, rage building inside her. How dare he? Even if the test results suggested Nathan wasn't Zack's biological father, he was the only father Zack had ever known. He had held Zack as a newborn, taught him to ride a bike, cheered at his little league games. 15 years of being dad couldn't be erased by a genetic test, unless... A terrible thought occurred to her. What if Nathan already knew? What if that was the real reason he had left so suddenly? Olivia opened her laptop again and navigated to the second mortgage option her bank had offered. It would add $340 to her monthly payments, money she didn't have, but it would give her $5,000 cash now. Enough for the tests and one more mortgage payment while she figured out what to do next. Her cursor hovered over the Apply Now button. She was already drowning in debt. This could be the final push under the water, but what choice did she have? Zach needed answers. He needed treatment. Julia called just as Olivia was about to click. "Hey, just checking in. How was the appointment? Did the test results show anything?" Olivia broke down, telling her everything. The blood disorder, the genetic impossibility, the need for more expensive tests. "Oh my God, Liv. That's insane. What are you going to do?" "I'm about to take out a second mortgage. It's the only way I can afford these tests." There was a long pause. "Don't do that yet," Julia finally said. "I have about $2,000 in savings. It's for my trip to see my sister in Phoenix, but this is more important. Let me help." "Julia, I can't." "Yes, you can, and you would do the same. For me, look, between my $2,000 and your $170, you just need about $1,600 more. What about your parents?" Olivia had been avoiding calling her parents in Florida. They had never approved of Nathan, had thought Olivia was rushing into marriage too young. The smug "I told you so" when he left had strained their relationship. "Maybe," Olivia conceded. "I'll call them tomorrow." "Good. And Liv? If there's even a chance that Nathan knew about this, that he left because of some DNA test, you need to find out the truth. For Zach's sake." After they hung up, Olivia sat in the silent kitchen, staring at the faded family photos on the refrigerator. In one, Nathan held a 6-year-old Zach on his shoulders at the beach, both of them laughing. Had it all been a lie? And if Nathan wasn't Zach's biological father, then who was? She thought about Thompson Biotech, about the rare syndrome named after James Thompson, about the fertility clinic funded by the Thompson family fortune. A pattern was emerging that seemed too specific to be coincidence. With sudden resolve, Olivia closed the second mortgage application and opened a new browser tab. She typed, "Lakeside Fertility Clinic Scandal." What she found would change everything. She thought she knew about her family's past and their future. Olivia stared at her laptop screen, the blue light illuminating her exhausted face in the dark kitchen. The search results for Lakeside Fertility Clinic Scandal showed nothing substantial, just routine complaints about insurance billing and a malpractice suit from 2010 that had been dismissed. Nothing that connected to her situation or explained why Zach might carry Thompson genetic markers. She closed her laptop with a sigh. It was past midnight, and Zach had school tomorrow. She needed to sleep, even if her mind was racing with unanswerable questions. Morning came too quickly. Olivia dragged herself out of bed at 5:30 a.m., her eyes gritty from lack of sleep. She showered, made Zach's lunch, and started breakfast, moving through the familiar routine while her thoughts churned with the impossible revelation from Dr. Chang. "Mom, you're burning the eggs," Zach's voice cut through her thoughts. He stood in the doorway, lanky at 15, his dark hair falling across his forehead. Olivia noticed the shadows under his eyes, the slight pallor to his skin that had become his new normal. "Sorry, honey." She scraped the blackened eggs into the trash. "I didn't sleep well. How are you feeling today?" Zach shrugged, the universal teenage gesture of non-commitment. "Fine, I guess. My knee hurts a little." Olivia watched him carefully as he sat at the table. "Any dizziness? Headache?" "Mom, stop hovering. I said I'm fine." His tone was sharp, but Olivia saw the fear behind his irritation. Zach was scared too, even if he wouldn't admit it. "Dr. Chang wants to do some follow-up tests," she said, pouring a glass of orange juice and placing it in front of him. "To get more specific information about what's causing your symptoms." "Great. More needles." Zach stabbed at his toast. "Did Dad say he'd help pay for it?" The flash of hope in Zach's eyes broke Olivia's heart. Having some financial issues right now, but we'll figure it out. Right. Zach's face shuttered closed, like he figured out he didn't want to be part of this family anymore. After dropping Zach at school, Olivia drove to her parents' house in the neighboring town. The conversation went exactly as she'd feared. "I don't understand why this is your responsibility," her mother said, arms crossed defensively. "Nathan should be paying for his son's medical care." "Mom, please, this isn't about Nathan, it's about Zach." "Of course it's about Nathan," her father interjected. "Everything that's gone wrong in your life for the past 2 years has been because of that man. We warned you he was selfish." Olivia took a deep breath. "Can you help me or not? I need $1,600 for these tests." Her mother's expression softened slightly. "We'll help, of course we'll help. But Olivia, you need to be realistic. You can't keep emptying your savings account every time there's a crisis. What's your long-term plan?" It was a fair question, one Olivia had been avoiding. The truth was, she had no plan beyond surviving each day as it came. With her parents' reluctant loan and Julia's generous offer, Olivia had enough to pay for the additional genetic tests. But as she drove to the hospital to meet with Dr. Chang, doubt began to creep in. What if these expensive tests only confirmed what the first one suggested, that Nathan wasn't Zach's biological father? What actual medical benefit would that knowledge provide? Dr. Chang's office was busy that afternoon. Olivia waited for nearly an hour past her appointment time, watching other parents come and go, some with children who looked far sicker than Zach. She felt a twinge of guilt. Was she overreacting? Were Zach's symptoms really serious enough to justify spending their last resources on these tests? When she finally sat across from Dr. Chang, Olivia voiced her doubts. "I've been thinking, how certain are you that Zach has this syndrome? Could the first test results be wrong?" Dr. Chang's expression was compassionate but serious. "The preliminary results strongly suggest von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome, but without the confirmatory testing, we can't be 100% certain. And if he does have it, what exactly does that mean? What's the treatment? The condition requires specialized clotting factor treatments, regular monitoring, and potentially other interventions depending on the severity. Without treatment, patients can experience increasingly severe bleeding episodes, joint damage, and in some cases, life-threatening complications." Olivia felt the weight of responsibility pressing down on her, and knowing his exact genetic makeup will help with the treatment? Absolutely. Precision medicine is essential for rare genetic disorders. Knowing the specific genetic variant will guide the exact protocol. Dr. Chang hesitated. "There's also another consideration. If Zach does carry Thompson genetic markers, there may be research studies or specialized treatments available through Thompson Biotech. They've developed cutting-edge therapies specifically for this rare variant." The irony wasn't lost on Olivia. The company Nathan worked for might hold the key to treating the son, who, according to genetic tests, wasn't even his. Unless, "Dr. Chang, is there any possibility that Thompson Biotech would already have genetic information about Nathan? They do comprehensive health screenings for their employees." The doctor looked thoughtful. "It's possible, though, that information would be confidential. Why do you ask?" "Just wondering." "Dean." Olivia didn't want to voice her growing suspicion that Nathan might have discovered Zach's true paternity through company testing, explaining his sudden departure. After signing the consent forms and watching as both she and Zach had blood drawn for the new tests, Olivia felt strangely deflated. She'd expected to feel proactive, like she was taking a crucial step toward helping Zach. Instead, she felt as though she was grasping at straws, spending money they didn't have on tests that might only confirm what she already suspected without providing any real solutions. The rest of the week brought more immediate problems. The bank called about the overdue mortgage payment. The school counselor emailed to report that Zach had fallen asleep in 2 classes and gotten into an argument with his PE teacher when asked to participate. The check engine light came on in her aging Honda, and still no word from Dr. Chang. When her phone finally rang 6 days later, Olivia was grading papers at the kitchen table, trying to ignore the pile of unpaid bills beside her. "Mrs. Carter, this is Dr. Chang. We have the results from the follow-up testing." Olivia's heart pounded. "And?" "The results confirmed our initial findings. Zach does have von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome. We need to begin treatment right away." Relief and fear collided in Olivia's chest. At least they had answers. At least there was a treatment. "There's something else," Dr. Chang continued, her voice taking on an odd tone. "Something unexpected in your results." "My results? I thought we were testing Zach." "We tested both of you to establish inheritance patterns. Mrs. Carter, your DNA shows no maternal genetic match to Zach." The world stopped. "What are you saying? According to these results, you are not Zach's biological mother." The test results she had spent her last savings on, results she had hoped would provide clarity, had only deepened the mystery and shattered what little remained of the foundation of her life. "That's impossible," Olivia said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I carried Zach for 9 months. I gave birth to him. There were complications. I was in labor for 22 hours. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. "Mrs. Carter, I understand this is shocking. Medical records can confirm your pregnancy and delivery, which makes these results even more perplexing. I'd like you to come in tomorrow morning so we can discuss this in person. In the meantime, we'll begin Zach on the necessary treatments for his condition." After hanging up, Olivia sat motionless at the kitchen table. The house was silent, except for the hum of the refrigerator and the distant sound of Zach's music upstairs. How could she not be Zach's biological mother? She had the stretch marks, the C-section scar, the memories of midnight feedings and first steps, the fertility treatments. The thought struck her like lightning. Something must have happened at Lakeside Fertility Clinic. Something beyond a simple sperm mix-up. Unable to sit still any longer, Olivia grabbed her keys. She needed to talk to someone who might understand, someone who knew about complex medical situations. 20 minutes later, she was sitting in the living room of Diane Mercer, a retired nurse who had mentored Olivia years ago when she briefly worked as a school nurse before becoming a teacher. At 72, Diane's mind remained razor-sharp, her decades of medical experience making her a respected figure in Westlake. "Embryo transfer," Diane said simply after hearing Olivia's story. "It's the only explanation that makes sense." "What do you mean?" "In vitro fertilization involves creating embryos outside the womb, then transferring them to the mother. If someone at that clinic deliberately switched embryos, you could have carried and given birth to a child that wasn't genetically yours." Diane's eyes narrowed. "And you said the gene disorder is connected to the Thompson family?" Olivia nodded. "Von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome, named after James Thompson, who was the brother of William Thompson, the Thompson Biotech CEO," Diane finished for her. "I know the family well. Or knew them, rather." "You did?" Diane rose slowly, her arthritic knees creaking as she crossed to a bookshelf and retrieved a framed photograph. She handed it to Olivia. The photo showed a much younger Diane in a nurse's uniform standing beside a handsome man in a lab coat, James Thompson. "I worked with him at Westlake Memorial in the 1980s, before he joined his brother's company. Brilliant doctor, dedicated researcher. We were close for a time." Olivia studied the photo. The man had kind eyes and a thoughtful expression. Nothing like the stern, imperious William Thompson whose photo appeared regularly in the business pages. "James had the same condition Zach has been diagnosed with," Diane continued. "He developed treatments for it, was passionate about finding a cure. When William founded Thompson Biotech, James joined to head their genetic research department. What happened to him?" Diane's expression clouded. The official story is that he died from complications of his condition 10 years ago. But there were rumors. James and William had a falling out shortly before his death. Something about ethical concerns over research protocols. Olivia leaned forward. What kind of ethical concerns? James never told me specifically. We had drifted apart by then. But I heard through medical circles that he had discovered something problematic in the company's fertility research program. Lakeside Fertility Clinic, Olivia said quietly. Thompson Biotech funded them. Yes, and more than that. They used Lakeside as a research front, supposedly for developing better fertility treatments, but Diane shook her head. There were always whispers about what was really happening there. Like what? Unauthorized genetic experiments, using desperate couples as unwitting research subjects? Diane sighed heavily. I never wanted to believe it. James was a good man, with a strong moral compass. If he raised concerns, they were likely legitimate. Olivia's mind raced, trying to process the implications. So you think Zach could be, what? Part of some secret Thompson biotech experiment? I think it's a possibility you need to consider. Diane placed a hand over Olivia's. When did you say you and Nathan underwent fertility treatments? 16 years ago. We had been trying for 3 years with no success. Dr. Gerald Ford was our specialist at Lakeside. Diane's expression shifted. Gerald Ford. He was closely connected to the Thompsons. I believe he dated William's daughter for a time. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. The connections were becoming too numerous to be coincidental. Did you keep any records from the fertility clinic? Diane asked. Consent forms? Treatment protocols? Anything? Nathan handled all the paperwork, Olivia said bitterly. He was always so controlling about it. Said he didn't want me stressed during the process. And you don't have access to any of it now? No. After he left, he took all the important documents. Said he needed them for tax purposes. Diane frowned. That seems convenient in retrospect. A thought struck Olivia. There was one thing. The clinic gave us a baby book when I got pregnant to document the journey. I filled it out religiously. It might have some information about our specific treatments. Where is it now? In the attic, I think. With the rest of Zach's baby things. I couldn't bear to look at them after Nathan left. Diane stood up. I think you need to find that book, Olivia. And I think you need to talk to someone else who went through Lakeside Fertility Clinic around the same time you did. I wouldn't know how to find them. Doctor-patient confidentiality. There's a support group, Diane interrupted, for families of children with rare genetic disorders. It meets Thursday evenings at the community center. I know for a fact that at least 2 other families there had children through Lakeside. As Olivia drove home, her mind whirled with new information and possibilities. The Thompsons, James's ethical concerns, the fertility clinic, all of it painted. A disturbing picture. If Zach wasn't biologically hers, and wasn't Nathan's either, whose child had she been carrying all these years? And why had Nathan really left? That evening, after Zach went to bed, Olivia climbed the pull-down ladder to the attic. The space was dusty and cramped, filled with Christmas decorations, old furniture, and boxes of memories she'd been avoiding. In the far corner, she found what she was looking for, a plastic bin labeled Zach Baby. The baby book was at the bottom, beneath tiny clothes and a receiving blanket she had knitted while pregnant. The blue fabric cover was worn at the edges, the pages slightly yellowed with age. Olivia opened it carefully, her fingers tracing the familiar handwriting of her younger self. She flipped through pages, documenting her hopes and fears, the ultrasound photos, the carefully measured growth of her belly. Near the beginning, she found what she was looking for, a section about their fertility journey. Taped to one page was a business card. Dr. Gerald Ford, reproductive specialist, Lakeside Fertility Clinic. And beneath it, in her handwriting, Protocol de JT37 begins today. Dr. Ford says this experimental approach has shown promising results. Nathan seems unusually confident this will work. JT37, James Thompson's initials. Olivia's hand trembled as she turned the page and found something she had forgotten. A photograph of her and Nathan standing outside the clinic with Dr. Ford and another man she now recognized from Diane's photo, James Thompson. The caption, in her handwriting, "Our miracle team. Dr. Ford says we're perfect candidates for the special program. So grateful for this opportunity." She hadn't remembered James Thompson being there. She hadn't remembered being part of any special program. Why had these details faded from her memory? Tucked into the back of the book was an envelope she didn't recognize. Inside was a single sheet of paper, a letter on Lakeside Fertility Clinic letterhead, dated 1 week before Zach's birth. "Dear Mr. Carter, per your request, we confirm that genetic testing has been completed as specified in Protocol JT37. Results will be maintained in our secure files for the requisite 15 years, as outlined in your consent agreement. Sincerely, Dr. Gerald Ford, 15 years. And Zach had just turned 15. Olivia felt a chill that had nothing to do with the attic's temperature. Nathan had known something all along, something about Zach's true genetic identity that had been kept from her. And now, 15 years later, whatever secret had been hidden was beginning to unravel. Olivia barely slept that night, the baby book and its revelations haunting her thoughts. Protocol JT37, the letter addressed only to Nathan, the 15-year time frame that had just expired. It was too organized, too deliberate to be coincidence. The next morning, she called in sick to work and drove Zach to school herself, studying, his face at every stoplight. His jawline, the shape of his eyes, the way his hair curled slightly at the temples, features she had always attributed to Nathan's side of the family. Had she been seeing connections that weren't there? Or worse, had she been subconsciously ignoring the truth that was literally written on her son's face? "Why are you staring at me?" Zach asked, uncomfortable under her scrutiny. "Do I have something on my face?" "No, honey, just thinking about how grown-up you look these days." Zach rolled his eyes. "Whatever. Are you coming to my treatment this afternoon?" Dr. Chang said it should help with the bleeding. "Of course I am. Nothing could keep me away." After dropping Zach off, Olivia headed to her scheduled appointment with Dr. Chang. She brought the baby book and the letter, determined to get answers. Dr. Chang's office felt different today, less clinical, more like a confession booth. The doctor listened without interrupting as Olivia shared her discoveries about James Thompson, Protocol JT37, and the letter addressed only to Nathan. "This substantiates what the genetic tests showed," Dr. Chang said when Olivia finished. "But it still doesn't explain how this happened without your knowledge or consent." "I signed consent forms," Olivia said, "dozens of them, but Nathan handled all the details. He said—" She paused, a memory surfacing. "He said I was too emotional about the process, that he needed to protect me from the technical aspects that might stress me out." Dr. Chang's expression turned grave. "Mrs. Carter, what you're describing sounds like intentional deception, possibly involving your ex-husband, Dr. Ford, and potentially Thompson Biotech. This goes beyond medical malpractice into potential criminal territory." "Criminal? What do you mean?" "If embryos were switched without proper consent, if genetic testing was performed without your knowledge, if medical records were falsified, these are serious ethical violations at minimum, possibly crimes." Olivia felt dizzy. "Are you saying I should go to the police?" Dr. Chang hesitated. "Before taking that step, I'd recommend gathering more information. What you have is suggestive but not conclusive, and the statute of limitations may have expired for some potential offenses." "So I should just forget about it? Pretend none of this happened?" "No. I'm saying proceed carefully. Thompson Biotech is an extremely powerful corporation with unlimited legal resources. Dr. Chang lowered her voice. There's something else you should know. Yesterday I received a call from Thompson Biotech's medical director asking specifically about Zach's case. Olivia's blood ran cold. How would they even know about Zach? That's what concerns me. I didn't provide any information, of course. Patient confidentiality is absolute, but the timing seems significant. As Olivia left the hospital, a strange feeling of being watched prickled at the back of her neck. She glanced around the parking lot, noticing a black sedan with tinted windows idling near her car. When she changed direction, the sedan pulled away smoothly, circling to the hospital's exit. That afternoon, when she returned for Zach's first treatment, she spotted the same sedan in the parking garage. Paranoia, she told herself. Yet the coincidences were mounting too quickly to ignore. Zach's treatment went well, a specialized clotting factor administered via IV that Dr. Chang believed would reduce his bleeding episodes. As Zach dozed in the treatment chair, drowsy from the antihistamine pre-medication, Olivia stepped into the hallway to call Julia. I need a favor, she said softly. Can Zach stay with you tonight? I need to look into something, and I'd feel better if he wasn't home alone. Of course, Julia agreed immediately. Is everything okay? You sound strange. I'll explain later. Just don't tell anyone he's with you, okay? After settling Zach at Julia's house with his medications and overnight bag, Olivia drove to the address on Dr. Ford's old business card. Lakeside Fertility Clinic had closed years ago, but the building still stood, an elegant Victorian converted to medical offices, now housing a dermatology practice. On impulse, Olivia parked and went inside. The waiting room retained the same layout she remembered, though the warm earth tones had been replaced with clinical white and blue. At the reception desk, a young woman looked up with a practiced smile. Can I help you? I was a patient here years ago when it was Lakeside Fertility. I was wondering if you had any of the old clinic's records. The receptionist's smile dimmed. I'm sorry, we purchased the property 5 years ago. All medical records were either returned to patients or transferred to storage. Do you know where? It's important. I believe there was a record storage facility in Millfield. She lowered her voice. Though between us, I heard there was a fire there about 3 years ago, destroyed a lot of documents. A convenient fire, of course. Was anything else left behind when you took over? Storage areas, filing cabinets, anything? The receptionist hesitated. Well, there is a basement we don't use, too damp for medical purposes. I think some of the old equipment is still down there. Olivia's heart quickened. Is there any chance I could take a quick look? I think I might have left something personal during my treatments. I really couldn't, the receptionist began, but was interrupted by an older woman emerging from a back office. I thought I recognized that voice. Olivia? Olivia Carter? Olivia turned to see Marge Winters, who had been the office manager at Lakeside. 15 years older now, but with the same kind eyes and no-nonsense demeanor. Marge, I didn't know you worked here. Office manager again. Different doctor, same paperwork. Marge smiled. What brings you back here? How's that beautiful boy of yours? That's actually why I'm here. Zach has been having some health issues, and I'm trying to track down our old records from Lakeside. Marge's smile faded. Most of those were lost in the storage fire. Suspicious? Timing, if you ask me, right after that class action lawsuit was filed. Lawsuit? I never heard about any lawsuit. Marge glanced around, then gestured for Olivia to follow her to a small break room. It was settled quickly and sealed by the court. Several families claimed Dr. Ford had conducted unauthorized procedures. Thompson Biotech paid everyone off, and the whole thing disappeared. Marge, I need to know what happened at Lakeside. I've learned that Zach might have been part of something called Protocol JT37. Does that mean anything to you? The older woman paled visibly. Where did you hear that term? I found it in my old baby book. There was a letter, too, addressed to Nathan about genetic testing. Marge's hands trembled as she poured herself a cup of coffee. I shouldn't talk about this. I signed confidentiality agreements. Please, Marge. Zach is sick. I need to understand what happened. After a long moment, Marge sighed heavily. I never knew the details, but I do know there was a special research program run by Dr. James Thompson. Only certain patients were selected, always couples where the husband had some connection to. Thompson Biotech, and always couples who were having trouble conceiving, like us, Olivia whispered. The treatments were conducted in the basement lab. Dr. Ford would only allow specific staff members to assist. The records were kept separate from regular patient files. Marge looked troubled. There were rumors about genetic manipulation, about embryos being modified before implantation. The room seemed to tilt beneath Olivia's feet. Are you saying Zach's embryo was changed somehow? I don't know, Olivia, but there's someone who might. Clara Patel. She was Dr. Thompson's lab assistant. She quit suddenly, right around the time you would have been receiving treatment. Last I heard, she was teaching at the community college. As Olivia left the dermatology office with Clara Patel's contact information, the black sedan was waiting in the parking lot. This time, she was certain it wasn't paranoia. Someone was following her. Someone connected to the secrets buried in Zach's DNA. The community college campus was quiet in the late afternoon, most classes already finished for the day. Olivia checked the faculty directory and found Clara Patel's office in the science building. According to the schedule posted on her door, she should be finished with office hours at 4:30, 10 minutes from now. Olivia settled onto a bench in the hallway, her mind racing with questions. What was Protocol JT-37 really about? How was James Thompson involved? And most importantly, if neither she nor Nathan were Zach's biological parents, who was? The office door opened, and students filed out. Olivia waited until the last one left, then approached the doorway. A petite woman in her 50s, with streaks of grey in her dark hair, was gathering papers at the desk. Dr. Patel, I'm Olivia Carter. I was hoping I could speak with you about Lakeside Fertility Clinic. The pen in Clara Patel's hand clattered too. The desk. I don't discuss Lakeside, ever. Her voice was tight, her posture suddenly rigid. Please leave. My son is sick, Olivia said quickly, before the door could be closed in her face. He has von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome. He was conceived at Lakeside under Protocol JT-37. I need to understand what that means. Clara's expression shifted, from hostility to shock. JT-37 actually worked. They told us all the embryos were non-viable. Worked? What do you mean, worked? What was the protocol supposed to do? Clara glanced past Olivia into the hallway, then ushered her inside, closing and locking the door. I shouldn't be talking to you. I signed non-disclosure agreements. They could ruin me. They're already ruining my son, Olivia said firmly. Please, help me understand what's happening. Clara studied Olivia's face, conflict evident in her expression. Finally, she sighed. How much do you already know? I know that my son isn't genetically related to me or to my ex-husband, despite being carried and delivered by me. I know that Thompson Biotech was involved in some kind of research at Lakeside. And I know that my ex-husband received updates about genetic testing that I never knew about. Clara nodded slowly. That tracks with what was happening. JT-37 was Dr. James Thompson's pet project, gene therapy targeted at curing his own genetic disorder. The treatment couldn't help James directly, but he believed it could eliminate the syndrome in future generations. But what does that have to do with our fertility treatments? Olivia asked. Thompson Biotech needed human embryos to test their genetic modification techniques. Fertility clinics provided the perfect cover. Desperate couples willing to try. Experimental procedures. excess embryos that might otherwise be discarded. The implications hit Olivia like a physical blow. Are you saying Zach was genetically engineered? Not exactly. The protocol involved isolating specific genetic markers from James Thompson's DNA, modifying them to correct the defective gene, and introducing them into embryos created from donor materials. Clara's gaze dropped. Embryos that were then implanted in women who believed they were carrying children, conceived with their husband's sperm and their own eggs. Olivia felt ill. How many families were involved in this? Dozens over several years. But the success rate was abysmal. Most embryos failed to develop, or the pregnancies ended in early miscarriage. By the time I left Lakeside, there hadn't been a single successful birth. But Zach was born healthy, Olivia said. And now, 15 years later, he's showing symptoms of the very condition this protocol was supposed to eliminate. Clara looked genuinely surprised. That shouldn't be possible. The genetic modifications should have permanently deactivated the defective gene, unless... Her expression darkened. Unless the protocol didn't work as designed, and instead of eliminating the Thompson genetic markers, it amplified them. So Zach is carrying James Thompson's modified genes? Is that what you're saying? It's more complicated than that. JT-37 used genetic material from multiple sources, James Thompson's modified DNA, healthy donor eggs, and... Clara hesitated. And what? Sperm from William Thompson. James convinced his brother that this was the best way to ensure the family bloodline continued, since James couldn't have children of his own due to his condition. The room seemed to spin around Olivia. William Thompson, the CEO of Thompson. Biotech is Zach's biological father? Genetically speaking, yes, though it's more accurate to say Zach is a genetic composite with William Thompson's DNA providing the foundation. The pieces were finally clicking into place. And Nathan knew this all along? The husbands were always informed. They had to be. They knew they weren't providing sperm samples. The wives were kept in the dark under the pretext of reducing their stress during an already difficult process. Clara's expression was apologetic. It was deeply unethical. It's why I eventually left. But why would Nathan agree to this? Why would any husband agree? Money, primarily. Thompson Biotech paid the husbands substantial sums, disguised as research participation stipends, and many of the husbands, like your ex, worked for Thompson Biotech or its subsidiaries. Their careers advanced quickly afterward. Olivia remembered how Nathan had been promoted to marketing director shortly after Zach's birth, a leap that had surprised everyone at the company. Now it made sickening sense. "There's something else you should know," Clara continued. "The confidentiality agreements the husbands signed had a 15-year term. After that, Thompson Biotech retained the right to claim legal interest in any successful research outcomes, meaning the children. Legal interest, what does that even mean? I don't know exactly, but I do know that William Thompson was obsessed with creating a genetic legacy. His own 3 children were disappointments. To him, more interested in spending his money than continuing his empire. The JT-37 protocol was as much about creating his ideal heirs as it was about curing his brother's condition. Olivia felt rage building inside her, hot and clarifying. So Nathan left 2 years ago because he knew the 15-year confidentiality period was ending. He knew they might come for Zach. Clara nodded grimly. And he probably didn't want to be around to see it happen. Easier to start fresh with someone new. What about the other families? The other children from this protocol? As far as I know, there weren't any others that survived. Zach may be the only successful case, Clara's expression grew troubled, which makes him incredibly valuable to Thompson Biotech. If his body is expressing the genetic disorder now, it means something went wrong with the protocol. They'll want to study him, to understand why the modification failed. They're not studying my son like a lab rat, Olivia said, her voice hard with conviction. I don't care what's in his DNA or who signed what papers. I'm his mother. I carried him. I raised him. He belongs with me. Thompson Biotech has virtually unlimited resources, Clara warned. And William Thompson isn't known for his ethical restraint. Neither am I when it comes to protecting Zach. Olivia stood, her decision made. I need documentation, proof of what happened at Lakeside. Do you have anything that could help me? Clara hesitated, then moved to a filing cabinet in the corner. She unlocked the bottom drawer and removed a thick manila envelope. I kept copies of certain documents before I left, research protocols, participant lists, payment records. I always thought someday the truth would need to come out. She handed the envelope to Olivia. Be careful. These people destroyed James when he tried to expose what was happening. He didn't die from his condition, he was silenced. As Olivia drove home, the manila envelope secure in her bag, she finally understood the full scope of the deception that had shaped the last 16 years of her life. Nathan hadn't just abandoned them for a younger woman. He had fled because he knew what was coming. He had accepted payment for allowing Olivia to be used as an unwitting surrogate, for allowing another man's genetically modified embryo to be implanted in her womb under the guise of fertility treatment. And now, the 15-year confidentiality period had ended. William Thompson, one of the wealthiest and most powerful men in the country, had a legal document somewhere claiming interest in her son. A son who was, in the most technical genetic sense, partially his. Olivia gripped the steering wheel tighter. They would have to get through her first. Olivia spent the evening at her kitchen table, spreading Clara Patel's documents across the surface like pieces of a disturbing puzzle. Payment records showed Nathan had received $175,000 in research compensation, deposited in increments during Olivia's pregnancy and the year following Zach's birth. Protocol documents detailed the genetic modification procedures in clinical language that obscured their true nature. Most damning was a signed consent form with Nathan's signature authorizing the use of donor materials in their fertility treatment without Olivia's knowledge. Her hands shook with fury as she read each page. 15 years of lies. A marriage built on deception. A child conceived as a scientific experiment. Her phone rang, startling her from her thoughts. Nathan's name appeared on the screen. She almost declined the call, then reconsidered. Let him explain himself. Nathan, she answered, her voice cool. Olivia, you need to stop digging into Zach's medical history. His voice was tense, lacking usual confidence. Interesting timing for your call, suddenly concerned about your son. This isn't a joke. You've been asking questions about Lakeside, about protocol JT-37, so he was monitoring her movements. The black sedan made more sense now. How would you know what questions I've been asking, unless you have someone following me? A pause. I'm trying to protect you and Zach. Protect us. Olivia laughed, the sound harsh even to her own ears. The way you protected me when you agreed to make me an unwitting surrogate for William Thompson's genetic experiment? Or the way you protected Zach by abandoning him right before Thompson Biotech could claim their legal interest in him? The silence on the other end confirmed her accusations. Finally, Nathan spoke, his voice tighter. You don't understand what you're dealing with. The Thompsons can destroy people who cross them. I've seen it happen. I understand perfectly. You sold our future for $175,000 and a promotion. You knew they might come for Zach when the 15 years were up, so you got out before you'd have to face what you'd done. It wasn't like that, Nathan protested weakly. We were desperate for a baby. We had tried everything. You were devastated every month when it didn't work. So you decided to let them impregnate me with a genetically modified embryo using William Thompson's sperm without my consent. Olivia's voice rose. That's not making a difficult choice, Nathan. That's a crime. I made sure you had the child you wanted. I raised him as my own until it became inconvenient, until the 15-year term was almost up. Then suddenly you needed a fresh start with Heather. A thought struck her. Does she even know? Or is she just another pawn in whatever game you're playing? Nathan's sigh was heavy through the phone. Heather has nothing to do with this. But you need to understand the situation you're in. William Thompson wants Zach, not as a son, as a research subject. The protocol was supposed to eliminate the genetic disorder, but if Zach is showing symptoms, it means something went wrong. They'll want to study him. Over my dead body, Olivia said, deadly serious. That's exactly what I'm afraid of, Nathan replied, his voice dropping. James Thompson challenged his brother's methods. He threatened to expose everything. A week later, he was dead from a medical complication of his condition. A chill ran down Olivia's spine. Are you saying William Thompson murdered his own brother? I'm saying people who threaten Thompson Biotech's interests tend to have tragic accidents. All I know is James was in perfect health, managing his condition. With treatments he developed himself. Then suddenly he had a fatal bleeding episode that no one witnessed. Olivia thought of the black sedan following her. So what exactly are you suggesting? That I just hand Zach over to them? No, I'm suggesting you take the offer they're going to make you. William Thompson's lawyer will contact you, possibly as soon as tomorrow. They'll offer money, a lot of money, in exchange for Zach's participation in their research program. You expect me to sell my son? I expect you to be realistic, Nathan snapped. Without their treatments, Zach's condition will worsen. They have proprietary medications that can help him. And with their money, you can give him a better life than you ever could on a teacher's salary. The casual cruelty of his assessment stung, but Olivia refused to show it. Is that what you told yourself when you took their money? That you were doing it for us? Nathan's silence was answer enough. I have copies of everything, Olivia said. The payment records, the protocol documents, your signed consent forms. If anything happens to me or to Zach, it all goes public. Olivia, don't threaten. I'm not threatening, I'm promising. You sold our son once. I won't let it happen again. She hung up, her hands trembling with adrenaline and rage. She had expected to feel satisfaction after confronting Nathan, but instead felt only a deep, aching loss for the life and marriage she thought she had. Her phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Mrs. Carter, my name is Edward. Voss, legal counsel for Thompson Biotech. I'd like to arrange a meeting to discuss a matter of mutual interest. Tomorrow, 10 a.m., the Thompson Conference Center. Mr. Thompson would value your discretion in this matter. So it was already happening, exactly as Nathan had predicted. She texted back, I'll be there, but I won't be coming alone. Less than a minute later, a response. We would strongly advise against involving outside parties. This is a private family. Family matter. The audacity was breathtaking. William Thompson had never met Zach, had never attended a single Little League game or school concert, had never helped with homework or comforted him after nightmares. Yet now he claimed him as family. Olivia called Julia. I need a huge favor. Can Zach stay with you for a few more days? Of course, he and Troy are getting along great. They're building some complicated computer thing together. Julia paused. Liv, what's going on? You sound strange. I can't explain everything right now, but I need to know Zach is safe while I handle something. You're scaring me. Should I be worried? Just don't tell anyone he's with you. Not even if they say they're calling from his school or doctor's office. After making sure Zach was settled and safe, Olivia made one more call to Diana Mercer. The retired nurse listened in shocked silence as Olivia explained everything she had learned. "I'm meeting with Thompson Biotech's lawyer tomorrow," Olivia concluded. "I need someone with me who understands the medical aspects and who isn't afraid of William Thompson." "I'll be there," Diana promised without hesitation. "And Olivia, bring copies of those documents, but not the originals. We need to make sure the evidence stays safe." That night, Olivia secured the original documents in a lockbox which she hid in the air duct of her bedroom closet, a hiding spot Zack had discovered years ago for his treasure maps and other childhood secrets. She made 3 copies, one to take to the meeting, one to leave with Julia, and one to mail to herself at school, where it would sit securely in the administrative office until she retrieved it. As she finally climbed into bed around 2 a.m., exhaustion overwhelmed her, yet sleep remained elusive. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw Zack's face, imagined him strapped to a laboratory table, treated as an experiment rather than a person. She thought of James Thompson, who had apparently died, trying to expose what his brother had done. She thought of Nathan, who had betrayed her in the most fundamental way possible, then abandoned them both when consequences loomed. Morning would bring her face to face with the people who believed they had a claim on her son. Olivia switched on her bedside lamp and reached for her phone. If she couldn't sleep, she would prepare. By the time she faced Thompson Biotech's lawyers, she would be ready for whatever they threw at her. No matter what DNA tests might show, Zack was her son, and she would fight anyone who tried to claim otherwise. The Thompson Conference Center occupied the top floor of Thompson Biotech's gleaming headquarters. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city, a reminder of the company's dominance. Olivia and Diane arrived precisely at 10 a.m., finding Edward Voss, Thompson Biotech's chief legal counsel, Dr. Elaine Foster, head of genetic research, and William Thompson himself waiting. Thompson was in his 70s now, but his commanding presence remained undiminished. When he stood to greet them, Olivia felt a chill recognizing Zack's eyes staring back at her, the same unusual blue-gray color and shape. "Mrs. Carter, thank you for coming," Thompson said smoothly. "Let's discuss Zachary's participation in our research program." "You mean your illegal human experimentation program?" Diane interjected. Voss leaned forward. "Mrs. Carter, whatever documentation you have is likely obsolete. The legal agreements governing Protocol JT-37 are clear. Upon the 15th anniversary of any successful birth, Thompson Biotech retains certain rights regarding the resulting genetic material." "You mean my son," Olivia said coldly. "Biologically speaking, Zachary carries my genetic material," Thompson replied. "He represents a significant investment and scientific breakthrough." They presented their proposal. Zach would participate in their research program 3 days monthly. They would provide comprehensive medical care and establish a $5 million trust fund, accessible when he turned 21. Diane noticed the document granted them guardianship rights during the research visits. "This gives you medical and power of attorney over Zack while he's in your facility. A standard precaution," Voss dismissed. "I'm declining your offer," Olivia stated firmly. Thompson's expression hardened. "Your ex-husband expressed concern about your ability to care for Zachary properly. Given his specialized medical needs, a case could be made that his best interests would be served by guardians better equipped to meet his needs." The threat was unmistakable. Thompson was preparing to challenge her custody. At Olivia's house later, 2 police officers were taking statements about the break-in. The interior was ransacked. Drawers emptied, furniture overturned, closets searched. "My documents," Olivia realized with panic, running to the bedroom closet. The air vent cover had been removed, the lockbox gone. "They took my evidence." Her phone rang. "Dr. Chang, Mrs. Carter, someone claiming to be Zachary's father, came to the hospital requesting all his medical records. He had documentation showing joint custody. "That's impossible," Olivia said. "My ex-husband hasn't seen Zach in months." "It wasn't your ex-husband. It was William Thompson." The escalation was happening faster than anticipated. They weren't giving her 48 hours. They were coming for Zach now. When Olivia arrived at Julia's house where Zach was staying, she found a police car in the driveway. Edward Voss was speaking with an officer holding an official-looking document. "Emergency custody order signed by Judge Harmon this morning," Voss was saying. "The boy needs to come with us for urgent medical treatment." "He's not going anywhere," Olivia interrupted, striding toward Julia's house. "That order is based on fraudulent information." The young officer looked uncomfortable as he showed Olivia the document. "Ma'am, this appears to be a valid emergency. Custody order granting temporary medical guardianship to William Thompson for 72 hours. This is based on lies," she said firmly. "Thompson Biotech performed illegal genetic experiments without proper consent. Now they're trying to take my son to cover it up." Voss smiled thinly. "Mrs. Carter is understandably upset, but her conspiracy theories don't invalidate a court order." Before the officer could respond, Marco Rivera, Julia's husband, pulled into the driveway. As a legal nurse consultant who worked with attorneys on medical malpractice cases, he immediately recognized the gravity of the situation. After reviewing the document, Marco looked up calmly. "Officer, this order contains several procedural irregularities. It doesn't include proper notice of a hearing where Mrs. Carter could present her side. Additionally, it cites medical necessity without including any supporting documentation from Zachary's treating physician." The officer hesitated. "I'm not qualified to evaluate legal technicalities. I'm going to call my supervisor." When he returned, the officer looked troubled. "My supervisor says I need to execute the order, but given the unusual circumstances, he's allowing a 24-hour grace period for you to file an appeal." After Voss departed with barely concealed fury, the group gathered in Julia's kitchen. Marco was already calling Caroline Wu, an attorney who specialized in medical ethics cases. Julia contacted her brother, a state trooper, who could escort Olivia and Zach to a hotel outside Thompson's jurisdiction. Diane arranged for her sister in Colorado to provide a safe haven. "Caroline can meet us in an hour," Marco announced. "She's already preparing an emergency motion to challenge the custody order." Dr. Chang agreed to document that Zach was receiving appropriate care, contradicting Thompson's claims. Michael, the vice principal at Olivia's school, secured the copy of documents she had mailed herself. For the first time since this nightmare began, Olivia felt hope blooming. When Nathan had left, taking most of their mutual friends, she had felt utterly alone. Now, faced with the greatest threat of her life, she discovered she wasn't alone at all. William Thompson had spent a lifetime using money and power to get what he wanted. But he had never faced a mother fighting for her child and the allies who refused to let her fight alone. As they implemented their plan, securing Zach at a safe location and gathering evidence for their legal challenge, Olivia realized something profound. Family wasn't just about DNA or legalities. It was about the people who stood beside you when everything was at stake. Attorney Caroline Wu's modest office contrasted sharply with Thompson Biotech's gleaming headquarters, but Caroline herself exuded confidence and sharp intelligence. She listened without interruption as Olivia explained the situation. So Thompson Biotech conducted unauthorized genetic experimentation through Lakeside Fertility Clinic, using you as an unwitting surrogate for an embryo created with William Thompson's DNA and his brother's modified genetic material. Your ex-husband knew and was paid for his cooperation. Now they want access to your son for further research. Exactly, Olivia confirmed. Caroline outlined their strategy. File an emergency motion to stay the custody order, request a different judge citing conflicts of interest, and file a separate motion in federal court alleging civil rights violations. There's something else we should consider, Caroline added. The media. Public exposure is one of our strongest weapons against someone like Thompson. Before Olivia could respond, her phone buzzed with a text from Michael confirming he had secured her documents. However, Thompson's people had already tried to intercept them, claiming to be her brother. The office door opened, and Caroline's assistant entered with a tablet. "Sorry to interrupt, but you need to see this." The headline made Olivia's blood run cold. Local teacher accused of medical neglect. Custody battle emerges over teen with rare condition. "They're trying to control the narrative," Caroline said. Grimly, as they formulated their response, Olivia received a text from an unknown number with a photograph of a document, a handwritten letter dated 16 years ago, addressed to "My Child" and signed James Thompson. The message read, "There's more you need to see. Lakeside Fertility Clinic basement midnight. Come alone if you want the truth about Zach's origin." Despite objections, Olivia insisted on investigating with proper precautions. Caroline's private. Investigator secured the location and confirmed one person waiting, a woman, not Thompson's men. At the clinic, Olivia was shocked to find Vanessa, Nathan's supposed mistress. "I didn't steal Nathan," Vanessa explained. "I was assigned to him by Special Projects Division to ensure he left his family before the 15-year confidentiality period expired." Vanessa revealed the shocking truth. Protocol JT-37 wasn't just about curing a genetic disorder but creating the perfect heir, combining William's lineage with James's intelligence. However, James had discovered his brother's true intentions and secretly altered the embryo formulations, then developed a treatment for the disorder. William buried the treatment after James died. It wasn't profitable enough compared to the chronic medications Thompson Biotech sells. Vanessa handed over the treatment sample and James's letter to Zach. The letter detailed James's initial excitement about the protocol, his growing ethical concerns, and his decision to intervene. "Whoever you are," it read, "know that you were created with extraordinary care. Your genetic heritage is complex, but it does not define you." As Olivia left with this precious evidence, her phone rang, William Thompson himself threatening consequences. But now, with proof of his crimes, Olivia finally had the power to fight back. The next morning, Caroline prepared to file their federal complaint and motion to invalidate Judge Harmon's emergency custody order. Olivia had arranged for an independent laboratory to analyze James Thompson's treatment formula, with Dr. Chang agreeing to review the results. Olivia's phone rang. "Nathan, William Thompson just called me. He sounds desperate." "What's happening?" he asked. "Justice is happening," Olivia replied evenly. "We have everything, Nathan. The documentation of Protocol JT-37, the evidence of your payoff, James Thompson's letter explaining how he sabotaged the protocol to protect children like Zach." After a long silence, Nathan admitted, "I never wanted any of this. When they approached me about the protocol, it seemed like the answer to our prayers. You let them use me as an unwitting surrogate," Olivia responded. "You accepted money to keep me in the dark, and when the 15 years were almost up, you abandoned us both." "Thompson threatened me," Nathan said weakly. "When I started expressing doubts, he made it clear there would be consequences." "What are you going to do now?" he finally asked. "File a federal lawsuit against Thompson Biotech and make sure Zach gets the treatment James Thompson developed, the one his brother buried because it wasn't profitable enough." "Thompson will destroy you," Nathan warned. "Actually, he can't afford this fight," Caroline interjected. "The evidence we have would not only result in criminal charges, but would devastate Thompson Biotech's stock price and reputation." "She's right," a new voice said. "Zach stood in the doorway, having heard everything, and I want to help fight." "I'm not a little kid anymore, Mom," he continued. "It's my life, my genetics. I deserve to know." Nathan's voice came through the phone. "Zach, son, I'm not your son," Zach said coldly. "A real father wouldn't have abandoned his family because things got difficult." Nathan finally offered to help, agreeing to testify about everything, the payments, the protocol, Thompson's threats, events. Moved quickly. Caroline filed the federal complaint, and Thompson Biotech's stock began falling immediately. By late afternoon, Edward Voss was calling to discuss potential resolution pathways. The settlement negotiations were intense. Thompson Biotech agreed to withdraw all claims regarding Zach, destroy all records connecting him to protocol JT37, and provide complete medical treatment based on James's formula. In exchange, Olivia would sign a confidentiality agreement. "Not good enough," Caroline countered. "We want the treatment protocol released to the medical community for all patients with von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome, and financial compensation." By evening, they had reached an agreement, a substantial settlement, guaranteed lifelong medical treatment, the release of James Thompson's treatment protocol to the wider medical community, and stringent oversight of Thompson Biotech's research practices moving forward. William Thompson himself never appeared at the negotiations, already fighting for his corporate survival as shareholders demanded accountability. 1 month later, Olivia stood in the doorway of their new home, a comfortable 3-bedroom house purchased outright with part of the settlement. Zach was in the backyard with friends from his new school, laughing as they set up a basketball hoop. The haunted look that had shadowed his eyes had begun to fade. Dr. Chang had confirmed the efficacy of James Thompson's treatment. Zach would always have the genetic markers of von Willebrand-Thompson syndrome, but with proper management he could live a normal, healthy life. The treatment was now being prepared for wider distribution, with Thompson Biotech forced to license it at minimal cost. William Thompson had suffered swift consequences. Though the settlement details remained confidential, enough information had leaked to trigger a shareholder revolt. He'd been forced to resign as CEO, his reputation in tatters. Nathan had testified about his role in the deception, then moved across the country to start fresh yet again. Vanessa had disappeared as planned, though Olivia had received one anonymous postcard. Some mistakes can never be fully rectified, but justice helps. Be happy. That evening, Julia and Marco arrived for the housewarming dinner, followed by Diane, Michael, and Caroline, the allies who had stood beside Olivia when everyone else had fled or failed. Zach proposed a toast. "To my mum, who taught me that family isn't about DNA. It's about who stays and fights for you when the world turns upside down." Tears pricked Olivia's eyes as she looked at her son, this extraordinary young man who had faced unimaginable revelations about his origins with courage and resilience. Whatever combination of genetics had created him, whoever had contributed to his DNA, she was his mother in every way that mattered. Later, after everyone had gone and Zach was asleep, Olivia sat alone on the back porch, contemplating their journey. A husband's betrayal, a corporation's greed, a desperate mother's fight against overwhelming odds. The DNA test that had started it all had indeed changed everything, but not in the way their enemies had intended. Instead of destroying their family, it had stripped away falsehood, revealing the unbreakable bond between mother and son. It had brought them allies and a new beginning. Olivia smiled as she gazed at the night sky. Genetics might determine eye, a color or predisposition to certain conditions, but it couldn't dictate love, courage, or determination. Those qualities came from the heart, not from DNA. In the ways that truly mattered, Zach was and would always be her son, not because of shared genes, but because they had chosen each other, fought for each other, and emerged victorious together. No test could ever change that truth.